She stood in the middle of my front yard with a clipboard in one hand and a folded HOA letter in the other. "Take that flag down today, or you'll lose your home," she said loud enough for every neighbor to hear. She pointed at the American flag flying above the old metal flagpole my late father and I had raised together years ago. Before I could answer, she pulled out her phone and started recording me like I was the one breaking the law. I looked at her, then at the flag moving in the morning wind. "This flag isn't coming down," I said quietly. That only made her smile. "We'll see about that. The HOA always wins." Within an hour, pictures of my house were all over the neighborhood's private online group. She claimed my flagpole was too tall, unsafe, and against community standards. The strange part was that 3 other homes had flagpoles too, but somehow mine was the only one she wanted gone. People started slowing their cars in front of my house, trying to see what was happening. Some looked confused. Others looked angry. By noon, I found a bright orange violation notice taped to my front door. It said I had 48 hours to remove the flagpole or face daily fines that could reach thousands of dollars. At the bottom was her signature, even though I knew she couldn't approve something like that by herself. My neighbor, Mrs. Carter, walked across the street carrying fresh cookies like she always did. She looked at the notice, shook her head, and whispered, "That's not right. My husband has the same flagpole and nobody has ever said a word." I thanked her, but something felt even more wrong. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules. She was trying to make an example out of me. That evening, another surprise came. A tow truck slowly stopped in front of my driveway. The driver stepped out with paperwork in his hand. "I'm here under HOA orders," he said. "They claim this truck has been abandoned." I almost laughed. The pickup wasn't abandoned. I had driven it that same morning. When I asked who signed the order, the driver looked down at the paper, and his face changed. "Wait," he muttered. "The signature doesn't look official." Before either of us could say another word, Karen's SUV turned the corner. And she wasn't alone. The biggest mistake a bully can make is picking a fight with someone whose story they never bothered to learn. Karen stepped out of her SUV, with 2 HOA board members walking behind her like they were deputies. She didn't even look at me first. She walked straight to the tow truck driver and said, "Why is that truck still here? Hook it up and do your job?" The driver held up the paper. "Ma'am, this order doesn't look right. It doesn't have the management company's approval." Her smile disappeared for just a second. Then she crossed her arms. "I am the board president. My signature is enough." "It isn't," the driver answered. "Not for towing a vehicle from private property." Neighbors had started gathering on the sidewalk. Nobody said a word. They were waiting to see what would happen next. Karen suddenly pointed at me. "He's lying to everyone. He thinks being a veteran means the rules don't apply to him." I stayed calm. "I never asked for special treatment. I only asked for the same treatment everyone else gets." She laughed. "Then explain why your flagpole is still standing." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded paper. "Because before I installed it, I asked the HOA for written approval." The crowd became completely silent. Karen looked at the paper but didn't ask to see it. "That's fake," she said almost instantly. "It came from the HOA office 6 years ago," I replied. "Signed by the president before you." One of the board members slowly turned toward Karen. "You told us he never had permission." Karen's face tightened. "The records must have been lost." Mrs. Carter spoke up from the crowd. "Funny. Records only seem to disappear when they help him." Several neighbors nodded. Karen quickly changed the subject. "Fine, even if he had permission before, the rules changed." "Really?" I asked. She smiled again. "Yes, last month's meeting." An older man standing near the mailbox frowned. "I was at last month's meeting. We never voted on banning flagpoles." Now people were whispering to each other. Karen tried to shut them down. "Everyone needs to stop spreading rumors." Then a voice came from behind the crowd. "I have the meeting recording." Everyone turned. It was David, the quiet neighbor who almost never spoke to anyone. He held up his phone. I record every HOA meeting because my hearing isn't great, he said. And she's right about one thing. Karen smiled for the first time in several minutes. But David finished his sentence. There was a change. She tried to pass the rule. And the board voted against her. The smile vanished from Karen's face. She had just been caught lying in front of the entire neighborhood. The truth doesn't need a loud voice. It only needs the right moment. Karen grabbed her phone so fast it almost slipped from her hand. That recording means nothing, she snapped. The official minutes are the only thing that counts. David didn't back down. Then let's compare them. For the first time, the two HOA board members looked uncomfortable. One of them quietly asked, Karen, did you update the meeting minutes after the vote? She answered too quickly. Of course I did. David shook his head. Then why do my notes match the first? Draft the secretary. Emailed to everyone that night? The crowd became silent again. Karen's eyes widened for a split second. First draft? She asked. David slowly nodded. You forgot that I saved it before someone replaced it with a different version. Mrs. Carter pulled out her own phone. I still have that email too. Another neighbor raised his hand. So do I. Then another voice came from the back. Me too. Karen looked around and realized she wasn't facing one person anymore. She was facing the whole street. She tried one last move. You people don't understand what's really happening, she said. He's causing problems in this neighborhood. He's turning everyone against the HOA. I finally spoke. No, you did that yourself. Just then, a black SUV stopped near the entrance of the neighborhood. A man in a suit stepped out carrying a file box. He wasn't wearing an HOA badge. Karen frowned. What are you doing here? He looked directly at her. I'm here because the HOA management company received several complaints about unauthorized violation notices, missing records, and possible misuse of board authority. Nobody expected that. He held up one orange violation notice. This one was emailed to us this morning. It was the same notice that had been taped to my front door. He looked at it for only a few seconds before saying, This document doesn't match our official format. And this approval number belongs to a completely different property. Karen's face turned pale. The man opened the file box. We're also here because someone inside this neighborhood has been sending us documents for weeks. He looked across the crowd, and that person brought much more than one fake notice. One lie can start a fight, but a stack of proof can end it. The man set the file box on the hood of his SUV and opened it. Inside were neatly organized folders, printed emails, copies of violation notices, and screenshots of messages. He wasn't guessing anymore. He had evidence. Karen forced a smile. Someone is trying to frame me? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up one folder and handed it to the two HOA board members. Read the dates. They flipped through the pages. Their expressions changed with every sheet. One of them looked up. Karen. These violation letters were never approved by the board. The other board member found something even worse. These fines were collected, but they never appear in the HOA's financial reports. People in the crowd gasped. Karen's voice became shaky. There has to be a mistake, the man calmly replied. That's what we wanted to believe too. Then he pulled out another envelope. This contains emails from someone inside the board. Karen stared at the envelope without saying a word. The sender asked us not to reveal their name yet. They said they were afraid of losing their position, but they also said they couldn't stay quiet anymore. Now everyone was looking at the three board members. One of them slowly stepped away from Karen. I didn't know she was changing documents, he said. She told us everything had already been approved. The second board member lowered his head. I trusted her, and I signed papers without checking them. Karen looked at both of them in disbelief. So you're blaming me now? Before either of them could answer, a police cruiser rolled slowly into the neighborhood. Nobody had called them this time. The management company representative quietly said, We asked an officer to come once we confirmed there could be forged documents. The officer walked over, greeted everyone, and accepted the folders from the representative. He turned to Karen. Ma'am, I'm not placing you under arrest today. Karen let out a long breath. But I do need you to stay here while we begin an official investigation into these documents. Her relief lasted only a second. Then the officer added, and before you leave, there's one more file we need you to explain. He held up a folder with my address printed across the front. I think everyone here deserves to hear what's inside this one. She thought the flag was the problem, but it was never about the flag. The officer opened the folder and looked at the first page. His expression changed immediately. This file has every complaint ever made against this property, he said. The strange part is, almost every one of them came from the same person. He looked directly at Karen. Neighbors leaned closer as he continued reading. Noise complaint, dismissed, unauthorized parking, false, unsafe, property. NO violation found. Illegal flagpole. No record of any law being broken. Every complaint had the same ending. No violation. The management company representative reached into the folder and pulled out one final document. This is the original approval letter for the flagpole, he said. It was never removed from our archives. Someone simply deleted it from the neighborhood files. Karen didn't say a word. The officer asked quietly, "Did you remove this document from the HOA records?" She looked around for someone to defend her. Nobody did. One of the board members finally spoke. "I think it's time for you to resign." Another nodded. "So do I." Within minutes, the emergency HOA meeting became something no one expected. The board voted to remove Karen as president. A second vote suspended her from the HOA while the investigation continued. The management company announced that every fine she had issued without proper approval would be canceled and reviewed. Families who had paid unfair penalties would receive refunds. A few weeks later, the investigation was finished. Karen was found responsible for altering records, issuing unauthorized violation notices, and using her position to target homeowners she personally disliked. The case was turned over to the proper authorities, and she faced the legal consequences of her actions. The neighborhood changed after that. Board meetings became open to every homeowner. All meeting recordings were saved online. Financial records became public for residents to review. The people who had stayed quiet for years finally found their voices. On the morning of Veterans Day, something happened that meant more to me than any apology. Families walked out of their homes carrying American flags. One by one, they raised them together. Not because the HOA told them to, because they wanted to. Mrs. Carter smiled and said, "You didn't just save your flag. You reminded all of us that standing up the right way still matters." I looked up at the same flag my father and I had raised years ago. It was still flying in the wind, stronger than ever. I never wanted to fight my neighbors. I only refused to surrender what was already mine. Freedom doesn't disappear because someone with a clipboard says so. It survives when ordinary people refuse to stay silent.